Hi friends, I am finally here with the Marigold Tarot, ready to do some unboxing. I watched Kellyanne Maddox's unboxing, and so I'm a little nervous about getting the actual box open, but we will see what happens. I guess, you know, all the boxes are difficult to get open. First box, second box. Ooh. Comes with this lovely little postcard, very spooky. And the infamous box. It definitely looks pretty. Let's see if I can get it open. The requisite plastic wrap. Yeah, and as you can see, there's no, like, usually these kind of boxes have like little tabs that allow you to kind of pull, so I can see why the box might be more difficult, although it's kind of sliding down, but now it feels a little stuck. Oh, there we go, maybe. Yeah, definitely not using this box. I need to buy me a bag. Well, that was easier this time around. All right, now to unwrap the deck. All right, I've got the deck unwrapped. The back of the cards is this beautiful marigold, which is a symbol that the deck author kind of describes as being integral to Punjabi culture. They actually released a PDF imagery guide, so not necessarily it's not necessarily as much of a reading booklet as it is about like explaining the differences in symbolism. So a lot of tarot decks, right, make use of a lot of very Western symbolism, things drawing from, you know, the Judeo-Christian traditions, and so it's always kind of unusual when we get a deck that makes use of symbolism that has a different kind of lexicon that is outside of the Western pantheon. So I'm really excited about this deck because it does feel so different from a lot of the decks that I've seen before. So all the cards have this really beautiful black background with like gold edging. The only other color that's really used is white, and it's very visually striking. All the figures are skeletons, and they look super badass and gorgeous. The magician looks really magical, kind of like he's in the middle of a spell, like you're walking into something very mysterious and secret. I absolutely adore this card. I love, for instance, seeing the shalwar kameez on the figures in here. It's so cool to me, like it blows my mind. So, secret about me, I'm secretly obsessed with like Afghanistan and Pakistan and that region of the world. For some reason, I think, you know, I was in, what was it, 8th grade when 9/11 happened, and so all of a sudden we were talking about this region that, you know, no one seemed to know anything about. I certainly knew nothing about it. So I began reading books and, you know, reading the encyclopedia, looking at maps. I even had a pen pal very briefly who was a Afghani refugee living in Pakistan. Like, I went all out. So it's really cool to me to have a deck that is exploring imagery of a region that I have studied so much in my life. The Empress and the Emperor definitely are a matching set in this deck. It just feels like they're, you know, sitting side by side on the same starry night in their chairs. The detail work on this deck is absolutely incredible. I mean, it is just so elaborate and beautiful. I am in love. This is the Strength card. You see there's a skeleton holding a skull. And this deck has so many references to like impermanence and death. It's really, really, really beautiful and very striking. I'm probably saying the same thing over and over again because I'm kind of in awe of this deck. When I think of what I know about the region, I mean, for so many centuries, there's been wars and conflict, all kinds of stuff. And I think that death features in a very different way when you're living somewhere where it's happening visibly. It's a constant reminder, right? Like we think about any country that is currently living through like war or conflict, right? Like you have a really different relationship with death, with impermanence when that's the case. And I think it's tempting. I think Western culture tends to look a lot at countries where it's primarily people of color and there's a lot of conflict, and it's sort of seen as like, oh, you know, those people just can't get it together, or those people are so, you know, X, Y, and Z that they're always fighting all the time. But I think we tend to really overlook the resilience and the strength of what it would take to live and thrive in a country where there's constant conflict, war, death all around you. Like, the amount of inner resilience that requires is immense. And I think we don't really appreciate that nearly as much as we should. So Wheel of Fortune is very interesting. There's actually there's a little handle, and you can kind of see it's sort of like a wheel, like a little machine. And then there's actually a hand with a finger that's been sliced off, like the person is trying to touch the wheel to mess with it in some way, and it's like, hell no, I'm gonna cut your finger off. And I think that's really, it's like we want to be in control, right? We're always trying to stick our hand in there, and we're always getting our fingers chopped off. I always identify with the Justice card a lot. Personally, I like this Justice card. It has a very regal feeling. There's a sense of balance, even aesthetically, right? You know, the scepter or the rod is in the middle, right? There's this sense of equanimity here in the card. There's definitely a few cards in the deck that are really, really intense, right? And I think I know Kelly Ann kind of noted some of these cards in her unboxing, and I can definitely see what she's talking about, where there's sort of a brutalism in the style of the way that certain archetypes are portrayed. The Death card, I think it's the 10 of Cups, maybe, the one with the nooses. And you can definitely see here, right, you know, this is a pretty strong image. But I'm not like turned off by it. Like, I think sometimes Western culture has a tendency to want to kind of gloss over the hard bits, to gloss over and sanitize what we find to be uncomfortable. We see this in America, right, with like things like racism, and it's like people of color are being shot down by the police, and we're like, oh, everything's great. Like, did you get your like Christmas cup at Starbucks, you know? So I think it's important to really sit with some of these difficult aspects of the human experience. This card is gorgeous, as are they all. I love the wings on Temperance. It's like, you know, kind of rising above the fray. There's a real feeling of peace looking at this card. I really enjoy this one. I keep saying it's my favorite, but okay, this one is really, really awesome. Like, this entire deck is phenomenal. This is super, super cool. So, I mean, the Devil, right, it's all about that sense of bondage, about being enslaved to something. I mean, this is so visceral. Like, that's the thing, is that the uncomfortable aspect, I think part of what is so uncomfortable about some of the images is that there's an intimacy to it, right? It's like, not only am I being violent to you, but there's an intimacy to our violence where, like, it's up close and personal, and that is so uncomfortable. But the truth is that is often how violence is, right? Like, you know, we've found ways to make violence less personal through drone strikes and atomic bombs, but like, this is the core of what violence is all about. I love the way the star, the moon, and the sun have a visual motif. I think this is gorgeous, very, very wonderful, and it has kind of a Georgia O'Keeffe vibe with the skulls. I'm liking it. Again, we can see sort of the the brutal intimacy here. And reading through the symbolism about this one in her guide, kind of talking about how things aren't always what they seem, right? At first glance, this card looks really upsetting, but I mean, are there times where sometimes we have to give someone a hard truth and it might seem really upsetting, but we're doing it out of love? All the different wands are flowers. They're beautiful. This 10 of Wands has a very almost peaceful feeling to it, right? Like we're still kind of stuck up in here, but there's something really kind of like the silence of winter. I love the cups with they're all skulls that are open on top, and this Queen of Cups is very beautiful. The swords are all different kinds of knives. It's really interesting. And the Queen of Swords is super fierce. She's like not gonna take any of your shit and is ready to like lop your head off. I love this Four of, rings. So instead of pentacles, we've got rings. And in the Rider-Waite, right, the Four of Pentacles is a lot about possessiveness and control. And I feel like when I look at this image, I see, you know, the moon, and the moon is all about like illusion and not seeing reality for what it is, right? Being kind of entranced by the moonlight. And it's like they're grasping at an illusion, right? When we're grasping for control, we're just grasping at straws. I've always struggled to relate to the King of Pentacles, but this King of Rings I could definitely get on board with. There's something very regal about him. He doesn't necessarily have that. I think a lot of times the depictions of the King of Pentacles, there's this like overwhelming like white male thing going on, and it is just repulsive to me. But this has a very different flavor to it, and I could definitely connect very differently to this representation of the King of Pentacles. Overall, I'm really excited to use this deck. I think it is beautiful. I think it takes on a new type of imagery that allows us to explore the human experience in a different way. It's unusual for me to pick up a deck where I don't feel like the main audience, and I'm glad that there are more decks that are being made and that are kind of outside of the realm of my typical experience, right? So I think, you know, as a white person who lives in America, who grew up Christian, right, there's a lot of tarot that was made by people that look like me, that, you know, grew up in similar traditions as me, and I'm really excited that that is expanding and that there are more and more decks that are diverse, that represent different points of view, that represent different cultures, different sets of symbolism and imagery, because we really need that, because tarot isn't just about being from one place. It's really something, I think, you know, that can be really beneficial to a lot of people, but we have to open up that, open up our viewpoint. I also love a challenge. So I love that, like, I don't immediately understand everything in this deck, right? Like, I have to like really do some research and like sit with it and grapple with it and look to, you know, unpack it a little bit. I love that so much. I hope you enjoyed this unboxing. If you're interested in the deck, if you Google the Marigold Tarot, you can purchase it online. I think it's definitely worth the money. It's very beautiful, will provide you with a really different and unique experience. And you can also support an artist who is doing amazing work. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe.